I also have a lot of content planned around my querying journey, where I'm going with that. I really hope to one day be able to do that how I got my agent video. Oh my goodness. Hey there, my name is Jasmine Skye, and I am so thrilled to be here today to say that after a year and a half of querying and only about a month and a half after I started this AuthorTube channel and posted my AuthorTube newbie tag and that clip you just saw, I have found an agent. I have officially signed with a literary agent. I'm dying. I cannot believe that I got here, that it happened. It's like a year and a half isn't fast, but it also feels really fast to me because if you watched my querying journey so far video, then you'll know that I was very much focused on the next project. Like I was gearing up to do the first draft of my next book that I was thinking, you know, might be the one that would get me an agent instead, because the statistics say that you will get your agent on your third book that you query. That's like the most common number, and this was only my second book, so I was like, okay, well, it's not getting me anything yet, so I'm just gonna push on to the third book and maybe that'll be it. And then here I am with my official agent contract, and I'm just oh my gosh. So I have officially signed with Mary C. Moore of Kimberly Cameron and Associates. I am super thrilled. She's an awesome agent. It's an awesome agency. It's a smaller agency, but still a very reputable agency. And Mary herself has a small client list, which I think is gonna be perfect for me because you get a lot of personal attention that way, and like everything has just been so amazing so far. But today I'm going to go through my how I got my agent journey, talk you through the process, what happened with the call, all of those fun details that might help you on your agent journey, or also just might be a fun thing to watch, I hope, because it was a whirlwind for me to have happen, and I'm just like still over here stunned that I am at this point. So again, I did make a my querying journey thus far video, which I'll link down below, which does talk in more detail about my last year and a half of querying. So I'm only gonna kind of sum up the most important bits for this video. So if you wanna see all the detail, and also if you wanna laugh with me about what my plan had been in that video for fall and spring, and know that that is no longer my plan, obviously, since I have an agent, then go ahead and check that video out. Again, link down below. I'll also link my AuthorTube newbie tag down below because that's the clip that you just saw, and you know, maybe you'll want to watch how I started this channel a month and a half ago. I don't know. I started querying, like I said, about a year and a half ago. I started querying late January 2019 with a novel that would become my MFA thesis novel. I started querying it after its third revision, before the fourth revision, which is the revision that was my MFA thesis revision that I did in fall of 2019. So I queried a lot of agents in spring of 2019, and then I stopped because I wasn't really getting a lot. I did get one full request at that point, but there wasn't a lot. Compared to the number of agents I had queried, I really wasn't getting much with that book. I did my fourth revision. I queried again, one last sort of big round for that book, and then I shelved it and moved on to my next book. So with that previous novel, my request rate, I queried about 80 agents, which was way too many, and I only got 4 requests, 1 partial and 3 full requests, and the partial didn't turn into a full. The 3 fulls were straight full requests. So that's a request rate of 4 out of 80, a request rate of 5%, which is very, very small. So that was my first experience querying. That wasn't the first novel I had ever written, mind you. It was just the first novel that I thought was ready to query. And it's still a novel that I really love. There's just some problems with it that make it a hard novel to sell, I think. So we'll see. I talked again more about that novel in my querying journey thus far video. So if you're interested, you can watch that one. I actually did query Mary, my agent, with that novel in March of 2019, and she rejected it in a day. She rejected the query, not even, the full or anything. So, that goes to show how much I've grown as a querier, I guess, since that point. So I guess that's kind of a funny thing. But anyway, I ended up writing my new novel, which is a YA fantasy. Currently, actually, Mary wanted to change the name of it, which I agree with, which I'm probably going to go into a whole video about changing my working title at some point. But in my previous videos, you would have heard me call it Shackles of Bone. Right now, the working title for it is actually going to be The Bone Forest, though of course that title may very well change if I get a publisher and they have a different marketing idea for the title and all of that. So I'm just very much someone who enjoys having a title that I can reference a book by and use for right now. So we're just gonna call it The Bone Forest and we'll go with that. So anyway, The Bone Forest, I started writing. I wrote the first draft in November for NaNoWriMo 2019, literally like right after I turned in my thesis for my MFA. I started Nano and it was a crunch time and I did it. So I wrote the first draft then, and I went a little bit into December with the first draft, and then I took the end of December and January off, and then I started revising it in February and March. So I did the second draft then, I sent it off to CPs, to critique partners. I got some notes back in early April, and I did kind of a draft 2.5 in April, and then I started querying it. I started querying it on the day of DVPit, which, if you don't know, DVPit is one of the many Twitter pitch events that can help you get an agent. So I did DVPit on April 23rd of this year with that draft 2.5. I got 3 agent likes that I thought were really good agents that I would want to send it to, so I did, and then I also sent my query to another 7 agents. So my first round for this book was 10 agents. And then I kind of sat on it for a little while to see what was going to come back with that. I did get some personal rejections that were targeted, especially, obviously to my opening pages because I didn't get any full requests. And then I also got some more feedback from some of the other CPs that I hadn't heard from yet with that draft 2. So I ended up doing a full draft 3 revision in May, and then I queried another 6 agents on May 13th. I did end up getting a full request, which was good, and it showed me that my query was working, so I was excited about that. So then on June 5th, I ended up querying what turned out to be my last round of agents with this novel. So June 5th was PitMad, which was the other huge Twitter pitch event. I only ended up getting 1 agent like for PitMad because PitMad is massive and it's very, very easy for your tweets to get lost. So I looked at that, and then I, looked on Query Tracker to see what other agents out of my list that I kind of set aside to query that I might want to query, because I was like, if I'm going to send out a query, I might as well send out a full round of queries. And that's when I noticed that Mary had just opened up for queries on June 4th because she'd been closed for all of the previous rounds that I had been querying. So I was like, oh, perfect. So Mary was an immediate query, and then I also queried another 4 agents. So my final round of agents was another 6 agents that I queried. So I sent those out, and then I just sat on it and waited, right? On July 2nd, I got a full request from Mary, which was really exciting, and less than a month from when I sent my query. But that's one of the things I really love about Mary, is that she's really, really fast about getting through her queries, and in general, she's just really quick and on the ball, and I just really love that. That was really great. So I got that full request, which was exciting. And then on July 13th, I received a rejection on the previous full that I had sent out. So I was feeling pretty bummed about that. I had only ever gotten the 2 full requests. Mary's was still out, but I wasn't feeling confident about it. And because I was like, you know, she's such a great agent and she's not gonna like my book, and this other agent rejected it, and I was just feeling down. Also just feeling really down about the fact that the YA fantasy market is just so oversaturated and hard to sell in, especially as a new author, and there's just like so many things that were going into it that led to my video that I made, which was my querying journey thus far video, where I talked about how I was going to try to write adult fantasy or adult romance fantasy as my next project and see if that would be an easier sell as a debut. All of those things were happening, and I was just kind of thinking like, okay, you know, I had set aside another 5 agents that I liked, that I was like, okay, maybe I'll do a final round of queries on these, you know, 5 agents. I was waiting for one of them to open up, so I've been waiting on those 5 agents, and then I would just call it quits with this book, right? Because I was like, you know, we're getting close to the upper 20s in terms of queries. It's a good number. I've queried all the agents that I'm like most excited about, and that's just gonna be that with this book, and we're gonna move on, and we're just gonna like just keep moving forward, right? But then on Tuesday, August 4th, I get an email from Mary. She said she read the book, she enjoyed it, but she has some thoughts. Can we hop on the phone? Super exciting, right? I'm like, oh my God, I got an email that this agent wants to call. Like that's crazy, that's exciting. But the wording of the email wasn't clear that it was gonna be an offer call, right? So I messaged my group. I have a big sort of querying group that I'm a part of, that we all help each other with resources and questions and things like that. And I messaged the group and I was like, I got this email, super exciting obviously, but like, what do you think it means? And someone in that group said, oh, I got a very similar email from a different agent, and it ended up just being an R&R, but she just wanted to do it over the phone to talk over the revision instead of sending an email asking for the R&R. I was like, okay, that makes sense. It's gonna be an R&R, you know, set your expectations low, Jasmine, like that's what it's gonna be, and that's great. Like, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna be changing my plan, you know, for the fall. I'm gonna get an R&R, I'm gonna revise my book with the revision notes, and then maybe Mary will wanna sign me, and that would be really, really exciting, right? I emailed back and I told her my availability for the week, and I literally just said, because obviously with the COVID-19 pandemic, I've been working from home, so my schedule in terms of my work hours is super, super flexible. As long as I just get my work done, it really doesn't matter if I like take a random hour off in the middle of the day. I just have to make it up later in the day, and things like that. So I just told her that, you know, I could basically do whenever, but these were the meeting times that I had that I wouldn't be available, right? And then at 2:08 p.m. that day, I get a call from a random number, and I was like, wait. So I answer the phone and it's Mary. And she was like, I'm sorry for calling you out of the blue, but I had time and I figured it'd just be easier just to go ahead and call. And I was like, sure, okay. I was not prepared. I was scrambling. My brain was like, red alert, red alert. Oh my God, you're talking with the agent right now. Don't make a fool of yourself. I definitely talked way too fast, way too much. I'm sure I interrupted Mary like so many times, because when I'm nervous, I just like lose social cues, and it was a little bit of a mess, but we made it work. So, you know, we started talking on the phone. She started off asking me about my past experience. We talked a little bit about my MFA program, things like that. And then she moved in and she was like, you know, really loved your book. I was crying through the end of it. Like, it was great. It was really nice to hear, obviously. But she was like, but this is what I need to see out of it, right? And the way that she worded that, I was like, okay, this is gonna be an R&R. She's gonna tell me the revision she needs me to make, and then I'll need to send it to her again, and then maybe she'll sign me, right? And I was like, okay, I'm ready to listen, got my listening ears on, right? And we started going through the revision, and a lot of the notes that she had were things I had already been thinking about with that book. So I was like, you know, yes. And then some of the stuff was stuff I hadn't considered, that comes from her experience, you know, selling YA fantasy and knowing the sort of professional market, but stuff that once she told me, I was like, oh, that totally makes sense. you know, the changing of the title from Shackles of Bone to The Bone Forest, which I'm the one that came up with The Bone Forest. I gave her a couple different options for what I could change the working title to, and she thought The Bone Forest was a good working title for now. But things like Shackles of Bone, even though it's a title that really makes sense for the novel, and it's a title that kind of rolls off the tongue, and it's really nice, the word shackles is just, has so many connotations that were not appropriate for the book, and for me as a white author to be writing, and like all of this stuff, right? So those kinds of things, you know, she was talking about, and we were going on about it, and I was kind of going back and forth with her on things that I was thinking as she was mentioning things, and other stuff I had thought for revision for the book and stuff like that. And then about 45 minutes into the call, as we were, you know, still kind of in the middle of talking about the revisions, she was like, oh, by the way, I'm going to offer you representation. You are? Like, oh, like this isn't an R&R? I was floored. I was like, thank you, I'm excited. Like my voice went so high. I squeaked probably. Like I was just over the moon, right? I was so excited. Mary is an absolutely spectacular agent. Like I said, she has a smaller list, but she's, you know, made some really great sales, and she's just great. She sells both YA and adult science fiction and fantasy, which is what I want to write. She even says that she would sell romance, and if you watched my querying video, you talked about how like I'm like kind of back and forth about if I want to write romance, or like the kinds of adult stories I want to write kind of straddle this line between like fantasy and romance, and would you sell it as a fantasy romance or a romantic fantasy and things like that. But now those are questions that I can talk to Mary about, and that's great, right? So yeah, so we continued talking after that bomb was dropped on me. The phone call ended up being like an hour and 20 minutes, and it was amazing. But of course, we didn't sign then because I had to give the other agents notice, right? So because Mary was in my last round and I hadn't sent out any more queries and all of this stuff, I actually didn't end up having a lot of open queries. I only had one open query actually, but I did send that agent notice that I had an offer of representation, and she emailed me back almost immediately and was like, you know, please send me the full. And I was like, oh, okay. It was another really amazing agent, and I was like, I don't know what I would do if I had Mary and this other agent both offering. And then I remembered that my previous novel I'd been querying still had 2 fulls out. So of the 4 requests that I got, the partial turned into a rejection, one of the fulls turned into a rejection, but I had 2 open fulls for that previous novel. I wasn't gonna bother with any of the queries I hadn't heard from, because those were undoubtedly cold no reply CNR queries, and you know, I wasn't gonna touch that obviously, but I did want to reach out to the agents who had my full, because it's not unheard of that like even a year after you sent out a full, or a year and a half, that you might end up getting word from an agent that, you know, they love it, yada yada yada. So it's just professional to let them know that I am currently, you know, potentially going to sign with a different agent, right? So I emailed the 2 of them, and I included the fact that I had, you know, gotten an offer on a different novel that was YA fantasy. Here's the query for it. You know, please let me know if you're interested in reading my new novel, and if not, then I just withdraw my old novel and all of that, right? One of them never got back to me, which is fine. You know, it happens. And then one of them did get back to me and requested that novel, but she didn't get back to me until like 2 days before deadline. I'm sure she's like crazy busy right now, but it did not leave her a lot of time. And actually, like right before she got back to me, the previous agent that had requested the full did end up sending a very, very polite rejection. She read the novel, she enjoyed it, but it's just not the right fit for her list, and so congratulations with your other offer, etc. And I was like, okay, that's very sweet. It was nice. It was a good rejection. If you are at the point, or you get to the point where you have an agent offer and you're sending out to other agents, you know, that you had the query of out to, that was hard to say, then, you know, they ask for the full or they don't even ask for the full and they just politely step aside. Like, if those notices of them rejecting you are really big disappointments, I think that is a clear sign that the agent who has offered is not actually the right fit for you. Because for me, even though this other agent was amazing and I would have been thrilled if she had wanted to sign with me, you know, if Mary had never been in the picture or whatever, or even if Mary had been in the picture and she wanted to sign, like I would have been thrilled and also like really, really nervous and like having to weigh pros and cons and stuff like that. But when she sent that rejection, I wasn't that upset because I was like, okay, makes that decision easy. I'm super excited to go with Mary. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how that happened. And so then I got those 2 days, you know, I sent her the full and I was like, hey, you know, the deadline's really close. Like, I hope you'll have time. You know what I mean? Like, we'll see. So she did email me back on the day of my deadline that I had given, which was Friday the 14th. And she said, you know, haven't been able to finish it yet, but I'm really loving it so far. You know, would you be willing to extend the deadline? If not, then I'll just cheer you on from the sidelines. And I sat there and I thought about it and I was like, I knew Mary would be understanding. If I asked Mary, hey, can we, you know, wait a couple days, right? She would have been totally fine with that. But I thought about it and I wasn't excited about waiting. Like I really wanted to sign with Mary that day. And even though this other agent was also an amazing agent with lots of sales and like, you know, a really great client list and all of that, I just realized I was like, my heart is already set. Like the conversation I had with Mary, you know, all the things we talked about, they felt right to me. Her vision for the book and the way that she, you know, wanted to sell it felt right to me. Like everything about sort of her list and her personality felt right to me. Like it was really good. Oh, and the other thing that I did was I DM'd one of her YA authors on Twitter who had her DMs open and asked her, like, I've gotten an offer from Mary, you know, would you be willing to talk about what it's like working with Mary and selling YA with Mary? And that author had nothing but great things to say about Mary, and it was really, really nice. And she was like, you know, hopefully we can welcome you to, you know, the agent siblings and like all of that stuff. And I was like, it felt so good. And this other agent who asked for the extension has a much larger list of clients. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because, you know, she has a lot of sales and a lot of experience and like, that's really, really great. But I just really liked the idea of being part of this like small, close-knit agent sibling group. And, you know, of course, like Mary is still fairly early into her career. So like her list may grow with time. But I like kind of starting out in this smaller, more intimate space. If I do end up staying with her for a long time and things like that. So, you know, all of this stuff combined, I was really like, so I ended up emailing back, taking the step aside. I was like, you know, thank you so much. I'm glad you're loving the book. You know, I'm really sorry, but I've made up my mind. I want to go with my original offer, etc. And that was fine. And it was great. And I emailed Mary and I was like, you know, I want to sign with you. And that's the other thing too, is that, I don't know, like, I guess I just wanted Mary to know that like she was one of my top options. So like asking for the extension on the deadline would be like me saying I'm holding out for a better offer. And that really wasn't what I was feeling. Like I wasn't holding out. I was just impatiently waiting for the deadline so that I could like officially sign with her. So I emailed her, you know, Friday after this other agent and I emailed and I said I wanted to sign. What are the next steps? 30 minutes later, she gave me another call, which honestly, like I know a lot of people in like my age bracket are intimidated by phone calls and stuff like that, but I have always been the kind of person that has loved phone calls. When I have a lot to say, like I very much prefer to talk it out on the phone or on Skype or whatever, instead of texting it out or emailing it out. And it feels like Mary is the same type of person, which is like great. And I'm like, again, this idea that like we just fit really well right now, which is just very exciting. So she calls me 30 minutes after I send the email on Friday. She was very excited. I was very excited. We had a really good conversation. She told me that she'd be, you know, sending the contract for me to sign, and all of the other sort of like minutia of what I would need to do. And then we talked a little bit more about the revision, my revision plan, stuff like that. And we talked about changing the title and the other titles I had come up with, and we chose the Bone Forest for now. And that was the conversation, and it was just so good. Like, it made me feel so good. It made me feel like I had made the right choice. I was just like so happy and just beaming, and I texted my family and I was like, I have an agent, it's official. Like, I'm just thrilled to be working with Mary. So anyway, here we are. That was how I got my agent story. I am really excited. I really didn't expect it to happen so quickly on this channel. I was kind of expecting that I would be in the query trenches and have more videos about being in the query trenches longer on this channel. So before I forget what, you know, being in the query trenches was like, which is such a drag, it's so soul crushing, and like I really hope for all of you out there who are in the query trenches or are about to go in the query trenches or anything like that, that you know, you stick with it, you persevere, and I really hope that you get your very exciting agent calls someday soon, because you know, it's hard. Being in the query trenches is hard. But I also kind of think of it like training wheels, because from what I understand, being on sub is harder, and you are constantly facing rejection in the publishing world as an author. So, you know, the query trenches is like a very big, scary gate that's closed in front of you. And, you know, it's so nice to open that gate, but I guess think of that time that you're in the query trenches as training. You know, this is your training montage to be able to sort of like get to a better mental state about dealing with rejection, and about like constantly writing the next novel and just, you know, doing the hustle and being ready for what's to come. I guess that's my biggest suggestion, being in the query trenches now that I'm out of it, at least for now. Of course, someday in the future I might have to go back into it. It happens, but right now I'm out of it, and that's really exciting. And that's my words of wisdom for you, is to take it as it is and you know, go with that. I am going to probably do one or two more sort of querying related videos. One on how I researched agents for querying will probably be my next video before I forget about that whole process. So look for that. So if you have querying questions, please leave them in the comments and all of that. As I said, there's a ton of links in the description for all the things I've talked about. I'm also going to link querytracker.net, because that's a great resource for querying writers. So if you haven't used it, I would recommend checking that out. Also under Query Tracker, I'm going to link Kimberly Cameron and Associates. So if you're interested in my new agent or any other agent at Kimberly Cameron and Associates, then you can check out their agency website and look them up and all of that. As always, there's also links for causes that need your support in the description, so please check those out and do what you can to support those causes that are very important. Right now, sort of the big one in the US is saving the Postal Service, so I have a link for that, for resources for that, but I always have links, Black Lives Matter, links to help various causes around the world, so please check those out. So anyway, if you enjoyed hearing about my agent journey, please go ahead and give this video a like, please subscribe. This AuthorTube channel is still really new and very small, but I'm really hoping that I'll have a lot of fun and informative videos about my publication journey in the future. So, you know, hopefully you'll want to follow along and hear the things I have to say and the things that happen to me. Thank you so very much for watching, and I look forward to chatting with y'all in the comments.